Make me your radio and turn me up when you feel low. This melody was meant for you. Sing along to my stereo.
Basically, the CCTV cameras help us manage the ground. We have 308 stewards in on an international match day. On a day like today, we have around 25 in. But that helps us deal with issues if there's any problems in the crowd. Occasionally we do have fights, but it is completely different to football or cricket crowd. We don't segregate the crowd, so you can support whatever team, whatever nationality you want, and you can be sat next to someone who's supporting the other team. The other thing that's unique to cricket and rugby is that you can actually drink as well whilst you're watching it, for the grown-ups this is obviously, which again is different from football. So we use the CCTV to help us control any of those issues. Then in this portion here, we have the Metropolitan Police Service. We'll have a Chief Inspector, one Sergeant and one radio operator. They control the 24 policemen that we have in on the major match days. What we then have here, at this end, Surrey County Cricket Club's own radio operators are dealing with communication to the stewards. They also run an incident log. So literally every question that's asked and an answer given or something that's reported is written down. It's also recorded on 3 computers in there onto the hard drives in that black box at the end, just so that if anything does go wrong and there's a subsequent investigation, we have a written log, and hopefully that will mirror the actual recordings of the voices and how it was managed. The little box on the wall there, which you can see with a picture of the ground on, that controls the floodlight masts. You've all seen the floodlight masts? There's 4 of them. They're at their full height at the moment. They're telescopic. So at the push of the button, they'll go up and down. They're 49 metres high when they're fully up, which is a lot higher than you'd find in other sports stadiums such as football and rugby. And then they reduce to half their height. In that corner there, that's where I sit. I don't always rely on the CCTV, hence the old spotter scope there as well, so I can actually see it happening with my eyeball rather than on a big screen. But the guys on the CCTV, if they do spot an issue happening in the crowd, they can take the image from there and pass it across to any one of these 2 monitors, so that we don't all have to crowd around over there. This system here is a turnstile counting mechanism. Basically, every time you come in for a turnstile and the arm clicks over, it clicks you in once. We also have turnstiles which can only exit through. So every time you go out, it clicks once. And what it does is it works out the amount of people coming in, add 1, if 1 goes out, take 1 off. We can bring into the ground 660 people per hour through 1 turnstile, of which we have 38. Anyone really good at maths?
Got a calculator.
Yeah. Basically, we can bring a lot of people into the ground in relatively quick time. And then this place here, it's the loneliest radio station. This is where London Ambulance Service sit. So we have 2 officers from London Ambulance Service, and they monitor the radio channel which our first aiders work on. And then what they do is they'll coordinate a replacement ambulance if the ambulance that we bring in has to take someone off to hospital. So the ground's never without a paramedics ambulance, so the type you see on the street every day. There will always be one of those in here when our crowds are above 5,000. What else is there about here? In the back, there's a room out the back there. That's a crisis management room. So if something does happen, so if there's a fire or a collapse of part of the stand, there shouldn't be, because we do regularly test every system there is, fire systems. We have structural engineers to test to make sure that the stands can constantly take the weight. The seats are always inspected. But if something was to happen, or indeed you get some kind of threat through the telephone system, you can go out there and turn it around a decision in quick time. It saves people having to sort of shout over each other. We take it out in the back. The remaining guys out here will monitor the situation and update us.
Would you deal with things like, say you had a 2020 game and you had a floodlight failure?
Yeah.
Is that the sort of thing that would be?
That wouldn't necessarily, but I mean, we would deal with that. What we do have, for things when the floodlights are on, we'll have a floodlight engineer. but we can operate on 3 floodlights. There'll be a slightly greyer patch out there, but what the ECB, which the England and Wales Cricket Board, which govern cricket in this country, they ask for, it's 2,000 lux on the wicket, which is bright. Out there it's like daylight, the only difference is you get foreshadows. This place as well, if this ground was to suffer a power failure, it can still run for up to 3 hours. At the back there we have those two things against the wall are actually batteries. So we can run off those for 3 hours. That's all the computers, all the CCTV, everything.
Where's the third umpire?
Third umpire is actually down the other end of the ground. What I'll do is, we'll go upstairs in a minute to the very top of the ground, and I'll point out to you some things down the end. Anybody got any questions regarding what happens in here?
Why are the lights so high? Higher than they are?
Purely because with cricket, the ball will travel a lot higher, a lot faster, and it's a lot smaller. So we aim to get the lights out of the sight line of the players, so when they look up to catch a ball, they can see it. They'd have to be up like that to really be sort of blinded by the lights.
Why would you bring the lights like down?
That's a good question actually. It's a planning condition. When we built this stand, we spent £26 million. So all the green seats from there across to there, this was a new stand built in 2005. It's called the OCS stand, but the local residents didn't want to have big floodlight masts up ruining their view or the area. So the planning officers said, yes, you can have floodlights, but you need to be able to reduce them so they don't ruin the profile of the ground.
So they come down every night?
They do, yeah. Occasionally they don't, purely because they're broken. But yeah, they'll go up in about 10 minutes, and then all the lights, there are around 300 bulbs around the 4 masts. All those lights will be up and fully on within 5 minutes once the masts are up.
What happens with the ground during the winter?
During the winter we do quite a bit of work out there, but at the very start of winter, have you all seen the American football which takes place at Wembley? Yeah. We're a training camp for one of those teams taking part. So last year we were Chicago Bulls, I think it was, trained here. This year in October we've got the New England Patriots training here. And they set up a full-size American football pitch out there. You probably won't see bigger guys anywhere else in the world. For them, a lightweight guy is probably about 20 odd stone. But they train hard, and still don't quite understand how it takes about 60 odd guys to deliver one game. But there you go. And we also have Australian rules football we've had in the past. We were the original home of the FA Cup for the first 20 years. International football started here, the first ever England international match, the first ever England international rugby match. We've played baseball here, hockey, lacrosse. We were home to a professional football side, well, they were a professional football side called Corinthian Casuals up until 1971. So we used to do that, but as cricket's moved on, it's become key to sort of like protect the wicket to preserve the first class game.
If you don't have a football match, how would you play like that? Because
Yeah, funny enough, we've got a replay of the first ever FA Cup, not featuring the original players because that was played in 1872. The first ever FA Cup was played between the Royal Engineers, which are an army regiment, or an army corps I should say, I should know, I used to be one, and a team called the Wanderers. The Royal Engineers did lose, but they went on to win it in 1875. They're the first and only ever army unit to take part in the FA Cup and win it. But we're replaying that game on November the 7th, so the Royal Engineers football team is taking on the Wanderers. So, yeah.
Actually had to take anyone to the school?
Huh?
Has anyone actually been taken to the school before?
Yes. Especially on the big games, when you have 23,000 people, it's like any small slice of the world or society. There will always be someone who gets ill or trips over or does something like that. And yes, but our first aid rooms are like mini hospitals. they have the ability to do whatever you'll get in a hospital, and they can ensure that basically anyone who is ill is in a fit state to be taken to hospital and then seen further on in care.
So Joe, what you said, obviously it's not just the players that do it, it's all the ground.
Yes,
But you look after the players as well, is they?
We look after the players as well, yeah.
What's the funniest thing you've ever seen looking out of this?
Funniest thing I've ever seen is a penguin go across the pitch. The penguin was about 6'2", so obviously it wasn't a real one, but it was a guy dressed as a penguin, and he actually managed to evade capture from our security teams for about 10 minutes. You do the old thing of streakers, the kind of naked runners used to cover themselves in suntan oil so you couldn't get a grip on them and they'd slip out easily. That doesn't happen so much now, but occasionally you'll get something like a penguin, or we've had all kinds of creatures out there. Batman, yeah, we've had morph suits. Have you all seen the morph suits? Those all in one life things. Yeah, we get quite a few of those.
Do players ever have fights? Like, is there ever fights?
It's like any professional sport. They're very competitive, and occasionally, whilst on cricket they don't tend to lash out at each other, they do tend to give each other the odd verbal insult and exchange every now and then. There are some good books. It's called sledging in cricket, but there are some good books which will highlight some of the classics, some of which I can't possibly mention now actually. Right, what we'll do guys, if you go out and then head out onto where we came in, and then